Hi, everybody. I'm Diana Mullins Atkinson. I am the owner of Sew in Common and the designer and creator of the Build A Quilt Patchwork in the Hoop system. And today I wanted to take you through just a little bit of what you can do with the Build A Quilt system. I know here at Sew in Common on our YouTube channel, we have over 260,000 subscribers now, and we couldn't be more thrilled that we have so many of you out there doing beautiful patchwork with us. And that's what we're dedicated to doing here is patchwork. Patchwork, though, done a little bit differently. Not so much, although you use your sewing machine a little bit, it's mostly done by building your segments with your embroidery hoop. So if you have a machine, any machine that can take a 5x7 embroidery hoop, you can use the Build A Quilt system. Now, you might be asking, why in the world would you want to do that? And that's a legitimate question. I've been a quilter for over 55 years. And so I remember when we sewed by hand everything. And then I remember moving into the whole idea of making our quilts with the sewing machine. Wow, what a concept. Traditional quilters weren't thrilled about it. Oh, it's not real quilting. But it was real quilting. It was just that next leap in technology. And that is what quilting with your embroidery machine is as well. It's that next leap, or what I like to call patchwork quilting for the 21st century. I know there are a lot of you out there that might have problems with your hands. I myself have had carpal tunnel surgery on both hands. So being able to use my embroidery machine really takes some of that stress off my hands. Love that. But I also know there are an awful lot of you out there that are in love with your embroidery machine and you'd like to do patchwork, but you really kind of had been asking for a long time, is there any way we can do it with our embroidery machine? Well, now there is. Real honest to goodness patchwork, not the patchwork that you lay down on top and you build your whole block on one piece with the stabilizer and batting and all already there, and then which is fine. But this was created from a quilter for quilters, or for people that want to do real honest to goodness patchwork. With the Build A Quilt system, you can build just about any quilt you want. And I'll go over more of that detail with you in just a little bit. So the other reason I created this system is the largest growing population of quilters throughout the world are 18 to 34-year-olds. Hi, y'all. So glad to have you here, all of you at Sew in Common. Love having you as part of our family. Love having all of you as part of our family. But what this tells me is that that age group, they want to do 21st century patchwork. They don't necessarily want to do patchwork the way their moms and their grandmoms and their aunties did. And that's okay. I wanted to make sure with Build A Quilt that anyone and everyone that wants to do patchwork quilting can do it. And so that led me to create the Build A Quilt system. Now, I'll tell you more about where you can find the system and all in a little bit. But first, let me briefly tell you about our two main products that we have for the Build A Quilt system that came out in 2023. Now that we're in 2024, there's going to be even more things coming out. But the very first product package that we came out with was our Build A Quilt Basic Block Set 1. And you might have seen another video where I talk about this, where it gives you your solid square, your half square triangle, and your quarter square triangle. And each one of these digital files comes in 4 sizes. So if you need a 2-inch finished block, it's in here. If you need a 5-inch finished segment piece, it's in here as well. 2, 3, 4, and 5-inch finished segment pieces so that you can build your quilts however you want them. Or if you've purchased a pattern and it has these segments in it, or can be broken down into these segments, then you can use that pattern. You just make it with your embroidery machine. Isn't that fun? Now, in the end, for larger pieces and the pieces, we do sew them together on our sewing machine. But before anyone goes, oh no, see, that's the problem. That 1/4 inch foot, it gives me a headache. I can't do it. I've tried, but I can't do it. I get it. Making a 1/4 inch on the sewing machine, there's so many try this, try that, try this, out there that it can be confusing. I get that. But with Build A Quilt, you don't need a 1/4 inch foot for your sewing machine when you go to sew your segments together, because there is a guideline built into the digital file that when you're making the segment blocks, that guideline gets built in and you follow it. So if you can say my finger is a line, if you can take your needle and follow that line, then you don't need a special foot because you'll have the perfect seam allowance for the quilted project. Okay, so let's not even think about the problems that people feel like they have doing the 1/4 inch. Because we don't need to worry about that with Build a Quilt. So you might have seen, like I said, set 1 before, but did you know that towards the end of 2023, I believe this came out in October or November, I can't quite remember, we also introduced Build a Quilt Basic Block Set 2. And this has 3 more of the most often used blocks in it. And we were so excited to bring you all this set in the same year as the first set, because so many of you wanted a very specific segment piece, and we made sure that it was part of this. And that is your flying geese unit. Flying geese units in traditional quilting take a little bit of measurement, a little bit of math. They're not really difficult, but I understand that they are one of a slightly more complicated segment blocks to do in traditional quilting. And another reason why people go, oh, I just can't do it, I'm going to give up. Well, you don't have to give up, because with Build a Quilt, it's all built in. All of your seam allowances, everything gets built into making your segment pieces. And in this set, you also get the fantastic diamond in a square segment, which is perfect for using as cornerstones on quilts, doing in the center of a beautiful star block, or I also love using it as my quilt label. And here's a tip from me to you. Don't put your quilt labels on the back of your quilt. Make a little space in the bottom of the front of your quilt top and put your label there so everybody sees who made that beautiful quilt. And the receiver of the quilt, if you give it away, will remember always where that quilt came from. So that's what I like to use for that. And then we also included the split rail segment block, because this can be used in a couple of ways. It can be used as a single rectangle or the split rail double rectangle. And the Build a Quilt Basic Block Set 2, each one of these comes in 3 sizes: the 3-inch finished, the 4-inch finished, and the 5-inch finished. So you have, between these 2 sets, folks, you can make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of quilts. You could only use these 2 sets and make all the quilts you ever probably want to make. But let me tell you a little bit more about what comes in the set. Over on our website, we actually have a free download. It's our Build a Quilt fabric quantity tip sheet. And what it gives you is it shows you the width of your fabric, so a 42-inch width and a 45-inch width, and how many squares you will get out of each one of those, depending on what your finished square size is. Okay, so that's free. So you can jump over to the website, and I'll give you that bit in a little while as well, and download that and put that right with your Build a Quilt segment, or your Build a Quilt instructions. Now, Build a Quilt Set 1 and Set 2 and all of our patterns are downloads. So you don't have to wait to be sent anything. You can have that wonderful thrill of being able to jump right in. But what you get with the sets is you get some general information. Now, this is in black and white. I printed mine in black and white. Some general information about me, and you get told what's in there. And then you get a general supply sheet, which kind of works for everything that you're going to make with quilting, like what kind of thread to use, what kind of needle to use, stabilizer. We have a great stabilizer video, which I will link at the end of this video for you. And then you get our exclusive cut sheets. It tells you, mostly with Build a Quilt, you start out either with a square piece of fabric or a rectangular piece of fabric, and then you do a little subcut, usually along a diagonal, and this is going to tell you what you cut for a finished half square triangle. You get that same kind of cut sheet for the quarter square triangle, and for the square, and for all the different pieces in set 2 as well. So you get our exclusive cut sheet. you get instructions, written instructions on how you put your pieces together, and you get the diagrams in there. And with each one of those sets, there's a full length how-to video, and they're timestamped. So if you don't want to watch the whole thing, you want to go right to how you make that flying geese unit, then you can just check the timestamp and do that. Plus, you get something that I don't think anyone else does in quilting. We give you our exclusive coloring sheets. What in the world's that about, right? Well, the coloring sheet is fantastic because our thought here at Build a Quilt is color, figure out your colors with your crayons, your colored pencils, then get your fabric and then cut your fabric. Especially if you're using a piece of fabric that you don't have a lot of, you don't want to accidentally cut it for one thing, find out you don't have enough, or find out that color doesn't work, or find out that fabric should have been used in a different place. So with the coloring sheet, you can color in your ideas, and you can make as many copies of the coloring sheet as you want, figure out exactly what you want to do, then you grab your fabric, then you cut your fabric, then you use your embroidery machine to make your segments, and then you sew them together, bind them, quilt them, bind them, and then you have a beautiful quilted project. Now, all of that comes with set 1, and all of that comes with set 2. You can find all of our Build a Quilt sets 1 and 2, and some of our free patterns as well at our website, sewincommon.com. And we'll go back to that again in a little bit. But first of all, I want to tell you again, all you need is a 5x7 hoop for your embroidery machine. As long as you can use that, you can make all of the segment pieces in those 2 sets, okay? Now, we do have some new sets coming out in 2024. We're working on a borders set for borders for your quilt. We're also working on a set of modified half square triangles, because the most popular and often used segment in quilting is your half square triangle. And we talk about that a lot in quilting. But there are also some quilts that have modified half square triangles, where half of it is the one color, but the other half might be done in 2, 3, or 4 different segments. And I'm going to show you a sample of that in a moment. And speaking of samples, let's take a look at some of the things that you can make. Now, I'm showing you blocks because it's easier to show you on screen, but know that you can make full-size projects, full-size quilts. We did a great quilt along this year that we're going to be finishing up in the next couple of weeks that is called Starlight Starbright. You can still get all of that over on the website until the end of January 2024. But let's talk about, if you're new to quilting, or if you're new to the quilting with your patchwork and the hoop process, let's talk about where you would start. You could start with the most very basic kind of block or quilt you can make with 9 patches. 9 patches are just 9 squares, and you get your square right in your Build a Quilt set 1. And I know some of you are saying, why would I want to do that in my embroidery machine if I could just cut squares? Because with Build a Quilt, it takes all the guesswork out of seam allowance. It takes all the guesswork out of cutting. It's just way simpler, even for squares. And they're all have the exact same seam allowance and everything built in, so that they match up with all of your other blocks when you're sewing them together. So you could start out with very simple 9 patches, and you could do those. Each one of those squares could be a completely different fabric. So 9 patches, great for if you want to do scrappy quilting. And it's also great if you want to do a very curated color set. So the next thing you could work up to is pinwheel quilts. Pinwheels are all done with only the half square triangle. So that block right there, every part of that quilt is just that block done over and over, got 2 different colorways. And the way you arrange it gives you that pinwheel effect. Isn't that fun? I love that. So that would be your next. And once you master how to make that half square triangle, you're going to be a breeze at knowing how to do the rest of your segments. Now, one segment set that we still have available at no cost over in the website is the one of the two main reasons people like to get into patchwork quilting, and that is the log cabin square. This is our Starburst, sorry, table topper project. Now I still have to quilt mine. I haven't gotten to it yet. I know, bad, but you know how us quilters are. We make lots of projects and then getting the quilting done can sometimes take us a little while. But this one is on my list to get done right away because I love how it turned out. But this is done with our log cabin squares. And didn't that turn out pretty? All done, each one of those segments done with the embroidery machine. So that's super easy to do. And then the other thing, the other type of block that gets so many people involved in quilting is the star blocks. And oh, are there so many star blocks? You can make hundreds of quilts literally with just half square triangles. Seriously, if you go out and look, there are tons of quilts that can be made only with half square triangles. But star blocks are probably either the first, between star blocks and log cabin squares, those two get more people involved in patchwork quilting than any other kind of block I've ever known. This is called the crossover star. And this star is just made with our solid blocks. And this is not a regular half square triangle. This is one of the modified half square triangles. So you can see half of it is one fabric, but the other half, instead of being one fabric, in this modification, it's two. And so this creates the modified half square triangle. I love it. This square actually was one that we did in our quilt along this year. The modified half square triangle was in there. And I love it. It's one of my absolute favorites. In fact, I have another version of the modified half square triangle crossover square right here, where instead of doing the solid blocks in the middle and the corners, in the corners, I did regular half square triangles, then my modified half square triangles, and in the center, I did my diamond in a square. And didn't that turn out pretty? It's still a crossover star, but just done in a little bit different way. So see all the different ways you can play with the segments to make blocks that are technically the same type of block, but they can look different. And they can look different just based on the fabrics. This one, I used 2 prints. And in this one, I used 2 prints. And well, this really isn't a solid. It is a tone on tone, but it's acting as a solid in this particular block. But see the difference by how you use color with your blocks? Very, very simple to do and so much fun to play with. And that's why I say it's so great to use that coloring sheet, because you can color and play and figure out what you want to do before you start cutting your fabric. And then another star that we did in this past year that was also part of our quilt along was called the Inspired Star. Now, some of you will see this and go, that's called the Lemoyne Star. That's called the Hunter Star. Well, yes and no. When I looked this star up, the history of it, when I researched it, we found over 9 names for this star. 9 names for this star. So we just decided to call it the Inspired Star. And that's this one right here. Isn't that pretty? Guys, solid squares in your corner. The rest of that is all half square triangles. See what I'm saying? All the quilts you can make just with half square triangles, but isn't that pretty? And the way that gets made is your half square triangles are made in, let's see, 1, 2, 3 different colorways. So one of them is your background and a light. One of them is your background and a dark. And one of them is your light and your dark. And how you put those together gives you the Inspired Star, or call it whatever you like. And then this is another star that I love. I call this the Pinwheel Star. I think it goes by other names too. But if you look in the center, it really reminds you of a pinwheel. And these parts that are right here reminds me of like a pinwheel swirling with fireworks coming off of it, sparklers coming off of it. Isn't that pretty? Oh my goodness, I love that so much. So that was another one we didn't do that one this year, but I think I showed it to you guys. And then another one we did in the block of the month this year. Excuse me, I have something in my eye. Sorry about that. was the, oh, now I'm forgetting what this one's called, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. It's this one. Gosh, I can't believe I forgot what this one's called, but this one is simple to make as well. However, this one has a 4-patch, quatrefoil. I know it would come to me. This is your quatrefoil block. 4-patch here, or if you didn't want to do a 4-patch, what could you do? Half square triangles, solid squares, diamond in a squares, do whatever you want in those cornerstones. Then this is your quatrefoil right here, this center piece. So the center was solid, and then I had half of a split rail here and a flying geese unit here. So this piece, half split rail, half flying geese unit. Cool. Those two pieces are in Basics Set 2. And then the center again was your solid block. So didn't that turn out pretty? And we did a variation on that one, on this quatrefoil as well, where we trimmed the center block with a small thin piece, and it looked beautiful. So just another one you can do. And then one more I'm going to show you before we wrap up is this big, beautiful piece here. Isn't this lovely? I love that one. Again, half square triangles and squares. That's all that is. Isn't that amazing what you can do? Now, you could do this one with half square triangles, squares, and flying geese units as well, but I chose to use half square triangles so everybody could do it before we put out the flying geese unit, because 2 half square triangles together will make kind of a workaround for your flying geese unit. But if you have a flying geese unit like we do in Set 2, you're going to love it even more. So that was another one. So those are just a few of the samples. This was a quilt that I created this year with some stars. This was not our quilt along. This was just a pattern that I created. And coming up in 2024, there's going to be lots of quilt pattern sets coming out. There is also, like I said, going to be some more of our Build A Quilt sets coming out. This was our fanciful floret table topper we did this year towards the end of the year. And it was our part of our giving program, because one of the things we like to do here at Sew in Common is give back. And so towards the end of the year, all the proceeds to this pattern went to children in need, and it still is. We're going to leave it up there throughout 2024, and then monthly we will give any proceeds we have to children in need. But this is another one that another piece that I did. So you can just do tons and tons. Now, I will also tell you, I think I mentioned it before, if you find patterns that you love in traditional quilting, you can most likely transfer those and translate those into the Build A Quilt system. And I did that. I love the quilt designer, and her name is Lori Holt. You've heard me talk about her if you've seen any of my other videos. And I took her kaleidoscope pillow and blew it up into a 60 by 60 quilt using my Build A Quilt system. And it turned out beautifully. And you can see I have a video on that on the YouTube channel. So don't forget, Build A Quilt Set 1 and Set 2 are available at a great value price at our website. Plus, we also still have some free patterns over there. If you want to give it a try, grab our half square triangle and our quarter square triangle patterns. Those are free, and that'll get you into the idea of learning how to do that. Now, those free patterns only come in one size. Your sets will always come in multiple sizes so that you can really expand and play with your quilting designs. So let me just remind you one more time. Our website is www.sewincommon.com. If you also subscribe over there, you'll get our blog and things like that when it comes out. And then, of course, our YouTube channel is Sew in Common, and we'd love to welcome you in to the Sew in Common family. And you can, do that by subscribing to the channel. And that's really easy. You just click that little subscribe button. And I would suggest you go ahead and set your notification, that bell, click on it and set that so that you get notified when we put out new content. I put out posts. I put out, we do some live videos. I do shorts videos several times a week. All the shorts videos are all tips or things explaining bigger things that are coming. And every Sunday we have a full featured video that we call Quilt Lab. And we'd love for you to join us for those as well. So if you need to contact me, you can always do that at support@sewuncommon.com. And I will get back with you right away. I usually can get back with you in just a few hours at the most. Sometimes it might take me a whole day if it's a weekend, but I try to keep up on those so that you're not waiting around a really long time for an answer to your question. And as I tell everyone on every video, we are artists as quilters, and don't let anyone just tell you, oh, that's just a hobby. It's not a hobby. It's an art form. And I want you to be able to do it. I want you to be able to join us here at Sew Uncommon, use the Build A Quilt system, make beautiful quilts, give those quilts as gifts, keep those quilts for yourself, and have people go, wow, what beautiful pieces of art you've made, because that's really what you're doing. And along the way, I'll be here to help you learn more about color. We'll be making more quilts together. We'll be talking about more blocks and things together in 2024. We have a whole lot of great new things coming in 24. So until the next time I see you, friends, subscribe, please, like and share the video so other people can join us too. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. And go sew life beautiful. I know you can. Bye for now, everybody.